Disclaimer, I'm merely stating fact, and I do not condone any illegal activities by any participants of the Boro bike tour. I will not be held responsible for their actions during the bike tour or thereafter. Thank you. Hello everyone, it's John with Cycling A1C. I hope everyone's doing well. What I want to cover today is the TD Boro bike tour, which happens in New York City during the month of May, and usually happens during the first Sunday of May. This year it's coming up, it's 2018, and this year it's coming up on May the 6th. I'm sure those who wants to join or who want to join the tour has already registered. So I'm sure the general registration is already closed for open participants. I believe the VIP participants and registration is still open. So if you want to fork up some buku dollars, go ahead and register, and that should get you to the front of the line. That's what the VIP registration does. So, if you have the money and you want to spend it there, then go ahead. What I want to cover today are tips, some tricks, and a couple of hacks which could save you some headaches, before, during, and after the tour. So that's what I really want to cover today. So I have a few notes that I made up that I, just for your information, I've done the Boro tour a total of 3 times. The first time I was kind of fumbling through it. I really didn't know what to do. Their website is pretty good and gives a lot of information, but a lot of it you just learn by doing, just like anything else. So I've compiled together my list. This is my own list of what I've observed and what made it easier for me in the following years that I rode the tour, and I want to share that with you today. And I divided this into different areas. The first area that I want to cover is before the ride. So the ride is, again, it's usually the first Sunday in May, May 6th this year. It's generally a flat ride, except for the bridges that you're going to be crossing. There's going to be 2 major bridges. Actually, there's 3 it's more than 3 bridges, but there's 2 major bridges that you're going to cross. When I say major, that means they're high bridges. So that means you're going to do a little bit of climbing. The first high bridge is the 59th Street Bridge, or the Queensboro Bridge. And the highest bridge and the toughest, in my opinion, is the Verrazano Narrows Bridge, which leads you into Staten Island. So, that being said, it's very important to be in decent enough shape to be able to conquer those climbs. It's not that long, but it's still pretty high. It's gonna tax your legs if you're not used to climbing. I mean, as far as just the riding part, the pedaling part, again, it's mostly flat, so you can go easy until you get to the bridges. There's also another part which I'm going to mention in a little bit that may be of some challenge and may be a little bit challenging. So again, it's a 40-mile ride, so be in the best shape that you can be. I'm not saying be a professional cyclist, but yeah, leading up to the tour, I would suggest you either get into some spinning classes, maybe run a little bit, do some squats, and that'll get you in some form of good shape to be able to climb those bridges. I'm gonna show you an example right here of what I mean about people who are maybe or maybe not in shape. And you can judge for yourself. Now, one of the tougher parts of the tour itself is it's not a climb, but it's the BQE, or the Brooklyn Queens Expressway. So that's kind of towards the end of the ride itself, leading onto going to the Verrazano Narrows Bridge. It's a long stretch of road, and what's hard about it is that it's usually pretty windy and the wind is blowing in your face. So it's like somebody pushing you and you're trying to push back. So it's that feeling, it's windy, you're trying to kind of navigate. The good part is that it's pretty wide, so you can go as fast as you can on that stretch of the road. But I really don't see too many people kind of gutting it just because of the wind that's coming off of the water. The water, is going to be on your right hand side, and it's blowing, and the wind is coming through, blowing in your face. So it's tough, especially. And that's on a regular day. That's not even like a windy day. Imagine if it's going to be a windy day. So another tip that I want to impart to you guys is that get used to your saddle. If you never ridden a bike before, or you don't ride your bicycle too often, or maybe you don't have a bike and you're renting a bike during this event, make sure that saddle is comfortable or you're used to it. It's either or. So get used to sitting on your bike. What I mean by that is that get used to the saddle. The saddle is, one of 3 or 4 main contact points that your body is going to have with the bicycle, and you're going to be on that particular saddle for 40 miles. So make sure either it's very, very comfortable for you and for your body type, or you're used to it. What I mean by that is that there are different styles of saddles. You may be renting a bicycle for this event, and I'm not sure if the store where you're renting it from has discussed with you what type of saddle is on the bike. Is it a racing saddle? Is it a hybrid saddle? Is it a mountain bike saddle? So there's different types of saddles. So if you're not used to the type of saddle, or you're not used to sitting on a bicycle saddle at all, then you may be in for a painful day on that particular bicycle. So make sure you're used to the saddle. Make sure you practice on that same saddle, if not a similar saddle, and just get your butt on a bike saddle. Just get used to the sensation, because you don't want to be pedaling for 40 miles with pain in your derriere. So along with that, use a chamois cream. A chamois cream is a cream that you can put on your nether region. That can prevent, or will prevent, chafing. And you'll thank me for that particular tip. So make sure you use a chamois cream. That's what it's called. Next tip. I'm assuming you guys have a bicycle. Or if not, you're probably renting a bicycle or borrowing a bicycle. Going back to the previous tip, get used to the saddle. Can't stress that enough. If you do have a bicycle and haven't ridden it in a while, make sure it's ride worthy. That means bring it down to your bike shop, to your favorite bike shop. That means bring it down to your favorite bike shop and get it fixed, get it looked at, get it tuned. Have the mechanic go over it. If you need to change a part, change it. If you need to change tires, change the tires. Just make sure it's ride worthy. I mean, first and foremost, I want you guys to be safe out there. And second, it's gonna make you easier. It's gonna make the bike easier to ride if it's all nice and lubed, no creaking. All the tires are nice and pumped up. So you catch my drift. So if you need to change something like cables on it, brake cables, make sure you check those. Again, safety first, guys. If you're renting a bicycle that day, do the same thing. Make sure it's ride worthy. Make sure you talk to the store. Make sure you talk to the person that's renting you that bike. Ask what type of bike it is. When was it last serviced? What type of saddle is on there? Are the tires good? Are the tires need to be changed? Ask a lot of questions. before you even go out and rent a bicycle for this event, maybe ask somebody. There's tons of forums out there for cycling, and I'm sure there's a forum out there that probably covers, riding the 5 Boro tour. So, a lot of people do rent bikes for the event, and ask, post a question. I'm sure somebody's going to come up with an answer. Which shop to go with versus a shop that kind of, don't go with this shop, go with that particular shop, that sort of thing. So, no matter what you do, try not to rent a heavy bicycle. There's aluminum bicycles, and they're pretty cheap to rent. I think for the most part, a lot of the rentals are going to be aluminum. You may be able to rent a carbon fiber. I'm not telling you to go rent because it's probably going to be expensive. But for the most part, a lot of these places that rent bicycles have them in aluminum, and and that's fine. That works. What I do not want people doing is renting those city bikes, and I've seen that done. And what happens is that, and I've seen this 2 years when I rode for a couple. The last time I rode was raining, so I didn't see it then. But the previous year to the last time I rode, I saw at least 2 or 3 of those city bikes just littered. People just left them on the road. First of all, they're heavy, and I'm gonna stop there. They're heavy. They're probably comfortable, but it's not designed to be ridden that far, and it's not designed to be ridden up bridges. I mean, a lot of people do it, but you couple the length of the ride plus the height of the bridges, and you're in for a surprise. So yeah, stay away from the city bikes. Rent an aluminum bike, and you should be okay. So I mentioned before that the last time I rode the tour, it was raining. It rained from start to finish, and that may happen on your tour. They ride rain or shine, so make sure you dress for the occasion. I looked at the weather forecast. I saw rain, brought my rain gear, rain jacket. One year that I rode, I think the first year that I rode, it was cold, especially when I got on top of the Verrazano Bridge. It was actually downright freezing. It was about 35 degrees when we got up there. But checking the weather, we knew what we were getting into, so we wore appropriate clothes. We wore long pants instead of wearing just the shorts, and also we wore jackets, designed for the cold. So you guys get what I mean. So during my last ride, when it was raining, the only thing that I wish that I had, and I had it towards the end of the ride because I bought one, when it was raining, was a rear fender. A rear fender on a bicycle. They sell these that you can just attach to the seats, and those work, and they work great. What they do is they prevent water from splashing on your backside and on the back of your shirt. So I know it's wet already, but what I'm talking about is mud. So if you don't want, if you don't mind getting all muddy back there, then that's you don't have to buy a rear fender for your bike. That's the first part of my my tips. So the second part is registration, and I put it on the second as part 2. Just because it's probably over. It's already March. It's already March of 2018, and as I mentioned earlier, general registration is probably closed. All spots have been filled. That's not to say you can't still ride the tour. And hack number 1. Again, disclaimer, I'm merely stating fact, and I do not condone any illegal activities by any participants of the 5 Boro Bike Tour. I will not be held responsible for their actions during the bike tour or thereafter. Thank you. So what I found out from riding the 5 Boro Bike Tour is that a lot of people when it gets closer to the actual day of the event, can't ride. You know, they paid however much the registration fee was, and maybe 2 weeks into, 2 weeks before the ride or a week before the ride, boom, something comes up, they can't ride. So what they end up doing is they sell, their spots on on any of those favorite local, free local websites. And I'm not going to name, the actual website. It starts with a C, but I see a lot of for sale, people selling their spots for the ride. So if you weren't lucky enough to secure your own spot, maybe that could be an option. There's also a big bike expo that happens that day, so make sure you check that out. There's a lot of, I think it's one of the better bike shows that I've seen. They have a lot of vendors, bike vendors, manufacturers, clothing, and anything bike related. So make sure you check that out as well. And you probably will, because you have to go into the, to register, you got to go into this big hall at Basketball City, and everybody's there. So and I usually buy something. They discount it. They have nutrition, which is what I usually tend to pick up. Sometimes I find a cheap pair of shorts, biking shorts, or a jacket. Just another tip, if you go on the last day, which is the Saturday, and you go kind of late in the afternoon, just like anything else, most of the vendors are, they don't want to carry that stuff back with them, so they'll sell it for a steep discount. So make sure, if you have the time, stick around until kind of the very end, and then kind of haggle and get the best price for any item that you would want to buy. So what's going to happen is that if you decide to, again, I'm not encouraging people to do this, because it's probably against policy, because it's not, you're not really that person. What, before I was so rudely interrupted, what would happen is that, during registration, during packet pickup, the person who registers will, usually they'll ask for an ID, and the registration, which you can put on your iPhone, and just basically show it to whoever's there on the counter, and they'll give you a registration. They usually give you a big plastic bag that has all the materials that you would need. The past few years they've handed out helmet covers, which basically helps people, the volunteers, identify who's a registered rider and who's not. And what they actually do is they actually kick out people. I've seen it done before. They picked out people from everyone that's riding around, and trying to be in the group. If you're not wearing your helmet cover, or you don't have the right number or sticker, whatever it is that they use for that particular year to identify riders, if you don't have those, they'll kick you right out. So if you're buying somebody else's spot, they have to give you that whole packet. What's good is that it comes in a plastic bag and everything is in there. And make sure that everything is in there before you kind of part ways. Again, do it at your own risk. You can also have, you don't have to be the one to pick up your packet. You can have someone else. Maybe you have a team. Let's say there's 6 of you riding, but all of you can't make it into the city to pick up your materials for the tour. What you can do is you can designate somebody to pick it up for you. What that would happen, all you need to do is basically fill out a form, and you also need to give a copy of your ID to the person who you designate as the person who's picking up your information. So Make sure you follow the instructions for that. I mean, it's pretty convenient. You don't, if you can't make it in, I mean, it's fun to always go into the city, but if you can't make it in, then you have that particular option. But they're not going to mail it to you. Somebody has to physically be there. I mean, again, it doesn't have to be you. It can be somebody you designate. So day of the event. Number one rule, and I think this is going to be the same this year as it was. It's been a couple of years now. No backpacks and no large bags of any kind that's going to be attached to either yourself or your bicycle. So none of those pannier bags, the bags that go to the sides of your bicycles, none of that. They will allow tool bags that go under your seat. I think they have the bigger ones, which you can stuff a lot more items in. But yeah, there's a limit to how big it is, and if they catch you, even with one of those the gym bags, the smaller gym bags or backpacks, they will confiscate it. So no large bags. The next big thing is where to park. You have a couple of choices if you're going to the event by car, and which I've always done. I've always driven, to the event. You could probably, if you're not from the New York City area, if you're from the city, then you could just, subway and bus, or just subway probably. But if you're from the neighboring area like Jersey City, you can jump on the PATH train. And that's one option for people that are from out of town. A lot of people ride from, a lot of people come from Pennsylvania, or even further, that come through Pennsylvania into New Jersey. One option is to park in Jersey City, and then you can, there's what we call the PATH train. You can, take your bike on the PATH train. It's like a subway, and then it pops you out under the World Trade Center. So it's pretty convenient that way. The other option is park in Staten Island, where the end of the Boro tour will be. Where it's not you can't park around where the park is, where they have the event, where they have the festival. But what you would do normally is you would park closer to where the Staten Island ferry is. The event, the festival, is about, I think it's 4 or 5 miles away from the ferry. So you actually, after you've enjoyed your time at the festival, you have to ride to where the ferry is. So for those of us who like to park in Manhattan, after going through the festival, we usually ride to the ferry, get on the ferry with our bikes and go back to Manhattan. It's free. The ferry is free. There's no charge. But what a lot of people do as well is they park in Staten Island close to where the ferry is, so they don't have to take the ferry back to Manhattan. There's parking structures in Staten Island. You can also try to find like street parking, and I know a lot of people do. But the last event that I joined, and I told you before, it was raining. It was hell trying to get out of Staten Island, because that area where the ferry is, a lot of the streets are closed off to traffic. So you have to get around it, wherever the close streets are. The streets aren't necessarily the biggest streets, so these are like 1-lane streets, and trying to find your way back to the highway. I mean, for some people it works. For me, it didn't work. So, and I prefer to park in Manhattan. And just one other tip, which I didn't put in my notes, is that if you park in the city in Manhattan, park by the West Side Highway, close to the West Side Highway, around Greenwich Street. It's a short ride to where the event starts. So, it's convenient for me that way. And and it's a Sunday, so there's a lot of parking, there's a lot of space, especially if you go early. So yeah, that's one tip that I have. If you're parking Manhattan around Greenwich Street, oh, this is very important. You're going to be grouped in waves, and I believe it's dependent upon when you registered. If you're registered with a group, I'm not quite sure how they determine the waves, but you know, it's basically a time of when you're going to start. Like they put you in colors, like they put you in the yellow wave, the red wave, the silver wave, that sort of thing. And you know, there's a designated time of when you guys are going to be, you're going to go off, I guess. Again, the first people that go off are usually like the VIPs and people that have paid. So you know, expect to wait a while. And make the best of it. It's not really the best situation because you're kind of crammed like sardines, basically. You know, but what I do is I talk to people. There's interesting people, ask them where they're from. You know, a lot of them are from, you know, I met somebody from, you know, came all the way from Europe one year. So yeah, expect to wait. Okay, go on to the next hack. Again, disclaimer. I'm not responsible if you take this advice. It's not really an advice. I see people do it. I'm seeing people done it, and you know, it seems to work for them. But if you don't feel like waiting in line and for your wave to depart, you don't want to be packed in there like sardines. I've seen people who come to New York early, and what they do is they ride to a certain point along the route. So for example, the route goes through 6th Avenue in Manhattan. It goes through, you know, these neighborhoods, like it'll go through Greenwich Village. So what people do is they either park in that area away from the start line, you know, to avoid the people there. And all those riders, and you know, they park maybe in Greenwich Village or maybe a little further north, and then they wait for, you know, the ride starts at a certain hour. So what they do is they just hang out, you know, look for waves of riders go by and just basically scoot on through. So you know, they're not waiting, you know, in line like everybody else. You know, when the crowd passes through with all the cyclists, you know, they just basically cut in line. So we get to the best part, during the ride. First and foremost, this is not a race, okay? So, and expect to go slow. You're riding with 30,000 plus people. Even though the streets are closed to cars and other vehicles, you know, it's still a lot of people. There's a lot of bicycles that are going to be around you. Unless you're in the front group and there's no one in front of you, and by all means, gun it. But for the most part, if you're in a wave, in the back, you're going to be going around maybe 8, 10, 12 miles per hour, if that. So, not a race. Enjoy your day. You know, how many times have you ridden in New York City without cars, you know, without worrying about cars hitting you? You know, once a year. That's, you know, enjoy it. Next, avoid accidents. How do we do that? Stick to your line. Stay in line. When you're riding, try to stay in a straight line. You know, keep that line moving. You know, don't be swerving to your right, to your left. You know, don't be going zigzagging around, you know, on the road. Again, there's a lot of cyclists around you. Don't do that. You know, there's a lot of novice cyclists as well, especially if you know, and you can usually spot them. People are just there having fun. Slow down, stick to that line. You know, stay the course. No sudden movements, and you know, that should keep you safe. And if somebody else is doing it, by all means, let them know not to. And I've done it before. It's not like, you know, just be nice about it. You know, please stop swerving, that sort of thing. So, and do use your voice. Do use hand signals if you're going to be switching lanes. I mean, we have to stop every so often. You know, if you have to go to the bathroom or something like that. By the way, they do have porta potties, porta johns on the route. So yeah, don't get creative and look for a place to, you know, relieve yourself. You know, they started putting them on the route themselves and not just in the rest area. So yeah, so if you can wait to get to a porta potty, please do. Don't. I think this is the most important part of the ride, is that do obey the local traffic laws, especially the traffic lights. They're there for a reason. Yes, the road that you're riding on is close to traffic, but the cross streets are usually not. So those lights are there for a reason, and when they turn red, please stop. You don't want to get run over. Again, please stop. You don't want to get run over. If you do run into issues with your bicycle or just issues in general, there will be SAG vehicle. SAG stands for supporting gear. So if you have a breakdown, if you get a flat, they're there to help you. If you're having other issues, maybe medical issues, you can't breathe or something else, you're not feeling too well and you want to abandon, there's going to be a lot of volunteers on the routes. Please let them know what your plans are, so they can probably jot it down, take notes, maybe take your picture and get your information, just to follow up on you. I mean, they're there, they're not going to hound you or anything like that. They just just give them information that they need from you, so everything kind of, they don't worry. First of all, a lot of them are volunteers and they do get worried. But yeah, a lot of information, how you're feeling, why you're feeling that way, that sort of thing. If you're going to a hospital, you need a doctor, you need an ambulance, they're there to help. So, they're there. There's a lot of them. So, yeah, take advantage of that if you do need it. Hopefully you won't, but, they're there. And this is for people that get tired. There are bailout areas. What I mean by that is that they plan for areas where people can get off of the actual route, and then there's usually like a subway station, so people can just jump on there and then get back to wherever it is that they need to go. They do that for a couple of reasons. One, for again, people that get tired, don't want to continue anymore, and for those people that didn't really plan on riding the whole route. So someone will say, okay, I'm just gonna ride to Brooklyn and get off at such and such an avenue where there's it's most likely on the map that they provide. So take advantage of that if you need to. But yeah, if you're planning your ride and you don't want to go all the way to Staten Island, you don't want to do the full 40, yeah, you can bail out those designated areas. You can bail out anywhere, but it's helpful if you bail out at those areas because they're closer to public transportation. So that's it. I hope you enjoyed my little bit of insight into the TD 5 Boro bike tour. Click like if you like this information, if you like what you see, and please do comment. I'm sure I didn't cover everything. I tried to. But most of this information, or actually all of this information, is from my own personal experience with the tour. I hope this information has been useful to you guys. Most of this information, if not all of it, is just from my own personal experience riding the 5 Boro tour. Please give me a thumbs up if you like the information. Please do comment below. I'm sure I missed some items. I try to cover all of it. I hope you guys enjoy yourself during the tour. Stay safe, and maybe I'll see you guys out on the road. Thanks.